Hopefully you can now hear that if you're hearing this noise, you're not in a good space. So when we're playing at like a nice half volume, you're not getting a lot of background noise or hiss. The noise floor is almost non-existent. What I'm using here today, and by the way, if you want to learn all the gear that I use, head over to studiolivetoday.com/gear. But as you can see here, I've got my iPad set up here, and the iPad here is being run by the Steinberg UR22C. I've got my guitar plugged in to the second input here, and I don't have my monitoring on, but when I play, the guitar is going to come through there. Now, this is connected to my iPad Pro via the 10-DAC powered USB hub you can see over here. So it's plugged into that. And then that's only got one thing plugged in, which is the Steinberg UR22C. That then goes out to this dongle over here. So this is your dongle, and that's your USB-C dongle. Now, you don't have to use the Apple one. You can use any USB-C dongle. It's a good thing about iPads that have USB-C. But if you're using an earlier iPad that has a Lightning connection, you need to use, say it with me folks, the genuine Apple Lightning to USB 3 adapter. If you try to use a knockoff adapter, it's not going to work. But if you're using USB-C, you can use anything. Now you can just go straight from the Steinberg straight into here without the powered hub. I always like to have a powered hub in the way because it just means that it manages all your power and you don't ever get those issues. Sometimes you get issues that are things like this device uses too much power and it won't work. So I always use a powered USB hub and then some sort of dongle, and then you can plug in USB devices till the cows proverbially come home. So when you're setting up in GarageBand, so let's create our first guitar track. We're going to hit the plus button here, and we're going to go to the amp. This time we're going to go with a cleaner kind of bass tone. Why don't we go with the bad attitude bass tone? Well, so the first thing you need to do is select the right input. So because, as you could see down here, I'm in input 2, I need to tap on this one, and I need to tap this one and go input 2. So that's going to bring the input on, and I then need to make sure that monitoring is turned on. So as soon as we turn monitoring on there, we're working fine. Sounding good, yeah? So no problem at all there. I'll just turn the monitoring back off for a moment. The thing that you need to be really careful of here when you're using a device like this, so when you're using an external audio interface like I'm doing here, is to set your input gain. So to do that, if we come back into the solo layout, every channel on an audio interface has its own input gain slider. And as I play here, I'll just play with one hand. All right, there's a couple of things there. We'll just turn it down. So can you hear that when I'm playing at, say, so that's at 12 o'clock, that's at half volume. So when we're playing at like a nice half volume, you're not getting a lot of background noise or hiss. The noise floor is almost non-existent. And that's about where you probably want to set things. If you set too high, let's turn it up to, say, 3 o'clock on the dial here. Can you hear there now? I'll just turn the noise gate off from GarageBand so you can hear the noise. Can you now hear that we've got a bit of noise in the background? So you've got a little bit of that hiss. Now what about when we go way too far? Let's turn it all the way up. Let's turn it up to 11. Hopefully you can now hear that if you're hearing this noise, you're not in a good space. And block your ears for a moment, people, because I'll just play a little bit with it up like this. All right, let's turn that back down. You would have noticed two things there. You would have noticed that the peak light was coming on. Now, this is different on different audio interfaces, but it'll always have some sort of indicator. On things like the iRig Pro and the iRig HD, that will be the light that will go from green to orange to red if you're peaking. And if it's on something like a Steinberg or a Focusrite or an M Audio, there'll usually be a peak light there. So when you're playing, as soon as you start seeing that peak light coming on, you can hopefully also hear something else. Could you hear the distortion? Yeah, so the distortion's there, but it's also, I'll do it one more time just for effect. Sorry, my phone was focusing on the head of the guitar there, my camera. So yeah, I'll do it one more time. We'll turn this up, and you'll notice two things. You'll notice distortion, but you'll also hear a limiting kind of sound, a compression in there. So we'll turn it up to an unadvisable level. and take a listen. Hear how it's like flattening out the tone of everything else. You can't hear anything else because it's doing that. It's actually sort of going in and out. Anytime you hear that pumping, unless you're actually trying to get a pumping effect, which is a whole thing in itself, but if you hear pumping, it's probably the wrong way around. Like, you probably need to turn it down. And here's the thing. The reason I wanted to make this the tip of the week this week is that most people will turn their volume up too loud. Like, very few people turn it down too quiet. And because mostly, especially for us older dudes and dudettes, it's because we came from an analog world where you had to really push it. Like, you had to drive the analog gear. And getting a little bit of that analog warmth and that analog distortion was actually okay. In a digital world, you get clipping, you get pumping. It sounds like crud. So you don't want to do that. All right, let's come back over here to GarageBand and do a couple of little test runs here just to show you the difference and what a good input versus a bad input would look like. All right, so we've got this. This is at 12 o'clock. So what we're going to do is record this at 12 o'clock. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that the volume of the input over here on your gear has nothing to do with this volume here. This is your output volume. So if you can't hear your bass, do not turn it up over here. Turn it up on your actual controls, your software controls, because this is output gain, and this on your gear is input gain. It's easier to see if you go to a microphone here. You can see it. They have a clearer view of this because on the microphone, see how we've got input gain over here on the left. Now again, because I'm using an audio interface, it says channel 1 there. You can't control it here. You have to control it with your gear. But output gain, you can turn up and down here. So when you're recording, do not touch your input gain. Get your input gain set right, and then leave it, and only touch your output gain. So if I was playing along with this, like say we're doing this, and I'm trying to play my bass, and I can't hear it, maybe before you reach for your input gain, turn up your output gain. All right, should we do a bit of a test run here? Let's play some bass, shall we? We've recorded in a bass part, and let's take a look at it. Yeah, right. So that's at the 12 o'clock setting, and you can actually hear it in the background right now. Let's solo it and take a bit of a listen and a look. Not bad, yeah? In fact, what we'll do is we'll turn off the monitoring, so we're only hearing the raw sound. And here's the problem. A lot of people look at that and they're like, that waveform is way too low. And it's probably slightly low. We'll do some experimenting and I'll show you a couple of different ways. So if we go here and we duplicate that one out, let's now turn ourselves up to 3 o'clock, shall we? So I'm going to use the exact same settings here. We're going to come into the bass and we're going to turn the monitoring back on so that we can hear it from there. And we're going to unsolo it because we had that problem there before. Boom. All right, so we've got both of the, actually we'll mute that first bass track, otherwise I'll have a whole bunch of bass tracks going on. So what I'm going to do is down here on the gear, I'm going to turn this from 12 o'clock around to 3 o'clock. Now, if you're not familiar with your clock settings, it just means it's pointing directly to the right now, like 3 o'clock on an analog clock face. Let's record in another bass take here on this one, but this time we're at 3 o'clock, and as you'll be able to hear with our bass sound, we have a lot more noise. And we're going to have a little bit more of a driven kind of tone here because we're driving the preamp a little harder. So let's hit the record button here and we'll do a... All right, so look at that. Okay, we're at 3 o'clock. Now let's take a look at this waveform in isolation. Yeah, so it's a lot chunkier, yeah? We'll turn the monitoring off there. I should be using these monitoring buttons. I don't know why I keep going into the other one. That's the quicker way to turn your monitoring on and off. So let's solo this and take a listen back with no other sound coming through except this bass. So can you hear how we're getting a little bit more of that compressed and limited kind of sound? Now, if you're going for that, more power to you. Go with it. But when you bring it in here with the drums, just bringing in a little bit too much noise, isn't it? Let's do a third and final take, and all we need to do is duplicate out that track. So we've got the exact same thing. Turn our monitoring back on, and there we are. And as you can see, when we come over to here, let me just show you the settings here. So you can see we are actually slightly clipping. You might not be able to see it, but the red light is coming on when we're playing over here occasionally. It's just flicking on. So we're right at the top of that range. So what that's telling me is that we are somewhere. What we want to be is somewhere between this and this. We don't want to be that low because your waveform's not big enough. It makes it really hard to edit. We don't want to be this chunky because we're seriously in danger of hitting the top end and clipping. So instead of being at 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock, where do we need to be? Well, we need to be at about 1:30. So we're just going to dial this back 1.5 pegs. And what you can hear there is that a lot of the noise has gone away. There's still just a little hint. And you want to find that balance. You want to get enough gain going through without hearing the noise. So it's called the noise floor. And you want to find the spot where that noise floor is sitting so that you can actually record it in. So let's come back over here. I'll bring up GarageBand again so you can see what we're doing. We will mute out those. And I'll do a similar one. I kind of liked the... I liked that kind of vibe. So we're going to record that one in again, a similar sort of thing to that to give us a little bit of a funky. So so that's going to be around about that sweet spot. It could probably go another nodule. In fact, why don't we just do one more? Because that was right there. Maybe we need to be 2 o'clock. Yep, still not clipping, still getting good. And I didn't play it particularly well that time. So let's go one more time with feeling and record in this bass part. So that one's not too bad. That's not too bad. And there you go. Yeah, that's almost looking perfect. Whenever I see something like that, we'll turn off the monitoring. Let's play this back again. There's just that little bit of noise. But you can see there that compared to this first one that we did, yeah, the first one is going to be really hard to edit because you can't even see when I'm not playing properly because the waves are so low. But this one here, way too over the top. So look, mix with your ears, not with your eyes, but sometimes looking at the visual is going to give you a much better indication of how you're tracking and making sure that you're not overdoing your bass. We now need to set up GarageBand to accept this. And again, I've showed you the setup that we've used here before. So let's jump over here and we'll bring GarageBand back into the mix so you can see our setup. We've already had our bass and Benny there. We're going to show you the flexibility of the GarageBand guitar amp sims here today because they are super cool. Let's tap the plus button here. We've got to go to the amp here. Now, if we hit more sounds, this will give us the ability. Go back to main categories. You've got your bass and you've got your guitar. Now we're playing guitar now, so we're going to use guitar. And you've got a whole bunch of clean, you've got a whole bunch of crunchy, and you've got a whole bunch of distorted and processed tones. So we're gonna try and layer up maybe like 4 guitar tracks, and maybe we'll pick one from each of these. So why don't we try, because we were talking wah before, let's get something here that has the wah pedal on here. Because I haven't actually tried this before, and I can't remember if it works. But we're going to record in a guitar part, and then I'll see if I can merge that recording to wah it afterwards. And we'll see if this is going to work, because we're doing something a bit funky here. So what do we need to do to set up our guitar? So we're going to go back to that guitar amp. We need to make sure that we've got the right input set. So we're going to tap on our input setting here. We've got channel 1, we want channel 2. So we're going to select channel 2, and we also want to turn monitoring on. If we turn monitoring on and play our guitar, we realize that our guitar is ridiculously out of tune. But I did that on purpose because what I wanted to do is show you that GarageBand's so cool. It's got a built-in tuner. Yeah, we can tune our guitar right here in GarageBand. So let's do some amazing fun tuning, shall we? And look, it's not a perfect tuner. but it does the job. This clean wah tone is actually pretty good. If you don't know, if you want to hear what it sounds like without anything going through, if you come in here and you just go to audio recorder, you go more sounds, and from your main categories here, you go down to fun and you go clean. You can actually get a feel for what it's going to sound like. We'll put it over to channel 2, which is our guitar channel, and we'll turn monitoring on and just turn the output gain up a bit. So that same guitar sound. That's the thing. So that's what it would sound like completely with nothing on it. So you can hear that when we use our guitar tones here, it actually sounds pretty darn cool. Now we're going to play in a little bit of a funky kind of beat with this clean wah sound. So let's do something a bit like that. I reckon we get a bit of a lead part going on with this one. All right, so we're ready to rock. Oh, you know what we haven't done? Not taking my own advice. We haven't checked input gain. I think we're about right. I think the input gain is okay. Sometimes you'll find that you need to put your input gain down a bit for your guitars and your bass, you need it to go up a little bit. Let's just do a test recording and see if this input gain is going to work for us. I forgot that we kept playing. That's all right. We'll come back to here. So yeah, look, it might be a little bit turned up a little bit too loud on this. Let's just take a listen back without that on. The other thing is that I'm using my the pickup at the end of the guitar here. I might want to go to the middle to get some of the neck pickup in here because it's sounding a little bit harsh. So we're going to try this again. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to go on the guitar. I'm going to change this to the middle there so I get both pickups here on the two humbuckers on the Les Paul, and I'm also going to turn this down. At the moment it's on the dot there, which is like the 2 o'clock dot. We're just going to just gradually bring it down closer to the 1 o'clock dot. Don't want to go down too much because we want to have a decent amount of gain going through, but not as much as we had there. All right, let's turn on our... What you're probably also hearing there is that there is a small amount of delay or latency here. Now that's almost unavoidable. It's in the vicinity of like a few milliseconds. But it's something to keep in mind. There is a way to get around that by monitoring directly through your interface, but then you can't hear the effects that are going through your guitar amp. So it's a bit of a trade-off here that there's that small amount of delay. And you're probably only hearing it more so because you're hearing the guitar coming through my microphone as I'm playing. In fact, what I'll do is I'll turn the mic down while I record this time, so you're only hearing the guitar amp sound. So let's hit record and give this one a crack. How did that come through? Let's see. Oh, see, now we're a little low. It's okay, though. We can still see it there. We probably needed to be somewhere between the last two, but we'll go with it here for now. And I didn't actually like that intro bit that I did there. So let's just play it back from this part here. So that is all in there now. So what we could do, we can change up. So this is the cool thing about recording here using your guitar amp sims, is that we can now change this up. So if we don't like the clean wah, let's try like a 50s rock and roll sound. Oh, I like that. I like the little bit of delay on that, yeah? What about a lush delay from the Tone Collection? Nah, too clinky. What about some rich harmonics? Oh, there's some nice. So you get some nice sort of saturation and crunchiness in that one. Sparkling clean. Not bad. I actually quite like the 50s rock and roll, yeah? With that little bit of a delay in there. Kind of cool. But what I'll tend to do here is if I'm layering up some more guitars, we'll duplicate out that first guitar and then we'll go back in and change the settings. So we'll this time go with something a little crunchy, shall we? And when it comes to crunch, I actually really dig the Rio Grande is probably my favorite tone here. It uses a bit of a Marshall kind of tone, and we'll need to turn the monitoring on. There you go. So I kind of like that one, which has a bit of the vintage drive on there. The other one that I dig in here is Sunshine Drive, but there's so many. This is more of the orange amp sound. In fact, we might use this one for this. So let's layer up another track in here and we'll just play along. So. Why don't we do some of that? Let's do that. We'll come back here and we'll just play it from this B section and we'll just play some like power chords. Maybe not. Maybe it'll come when we've got a bit more of a layer and we can spread them out a little bit, because maybe these two together with just, I think it just needs to go down in the mix. Yeah. So anyway, there's a way to use some crunchier tones. In the interest of time, why don't we duplicate that one out? Bang, duplicate, and we'll turn those off, turn that one on, come into here, and find ourselves some distorted tones, yeah? You need some distortion in your life. Now, I kind of like the power chord. There's a bunch of good ones in here. You got like a classic sort of brownstone sound. I just realized the volume is down. That's why we're not hearing much. So, there you go. So we've got like a brownstone sound, which is sort of like a Fender kind of brownstone. It's like a glam rock if you want to go a bit... with like a nice phase tripper on there. So you'll notice that every time we do a different one here, it's changing up the amp type, and it's also adding and removing some different pedals. A bit of industrial overdrive. My favorite in this one, not surprisingly, because I'm a punk, I'm a Seattle sound kind of guy, is the power chord. So. I mean, this sound's probably not going to work so well with our funky sort of thing that we're doing here for some power chords. So maybe we'll... I'm going to put myself into drop D. Yeah, drop D, baby. All right. What I'm going to do here is I'll just turn off everything else here, because we'll change this. We'll try and see if this will work in with our original idea. We'll just turn it down a little bit. All right, let's record this one in here. I don't think so. I don't think so. So it's a good sound on its own, but it's not going to really work in with all these, is it? Maybe we'll just put that as like an intro bit there. We'll leave it there for now. All right, one more type to go, and hopefully you're learning here. If you've poo-pooed the GarageBand amps before and you've never really played around with them, hopefully you're learning that they actually have some pretty darn cool tones in here. So we'll go in here, we'll go to the process tone. Now this is where you get some fun. You get some really cool stuff. So this is where you can get things like the insane vibe wah. Let's just turn that volume up a little bit. La 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 la. And what I did forget actually is that with ones that have a wah, we can turn on wah 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 wah. We kind of have to do some vibe wah now, don't we? Let's play some wah wah wah. Oh man, I started this stream with the sole goal of having fun, and I've definitely succeeded in my goal, and hopefully at the same time I've showed you some of the cool behind the scenes stuff of the GarageBand amp sims here in GarageBand. Why don't we just let's pan some of these. Let's just give ourselves some width here so that we can play around. The power cord can go down the middle. Why don't we bring our vibe wah to that side? We'll bring our sunshine drive to that side, and we'll put that there, and we'll put that there. Yeah, just so we can spread things out a little bit here and see what concoction. We'll just do a little bit of mixing on the fly here and see what we've been able to create here in a little about just 20 minutes of recording here in GarageBand. And don't forget that, again, you've got the full flexibility to come in here and change any of these up. And you've even got the ability. So if you've recorded these using the stock amp sims and you want to use something else, you want to use some tone bridge, you want to use some what am I trying to say? Anything, a bias FX or whatever you want. These are just audio. So you can use these on something else. So if we grabbed, say, this wah that we just did, or let's grab something better. Let's grab this bad attitude bass. If we just slide this on down to here, we've now got this on just a regular track. So it's just a regular clean bass sound. And then what we can do with that is come in here, go to your plugins and EQ and actually add. So we could add, we'll bring it all the way back around. We could add Mixbox on this one and bring in some Mixbox effects in here. Again, now that we've updated to the latest version. And we could add in a guitar amp here. So we could go in and grab, say, the Jazz Amp 120. And do we have a preset on here? Let's just grab a preset, a Let's Funk preset. And we can play, right? You can add a bunch of other stuff. You can put tape saturation on there. So the sky's literally the limit when it comes to this sort of stuff. And if you don't want to buy something like Mixbox, there's things, like I said, like Tone Bridge that's free that lets you do a little bit of stuff on there.